appreciate the fact that we're somewhat crowded in here. I would like for us to be as socially distanced as we possibly could. Again, I would make a plea for those of you that are not wearing masks to wear one, if for no other reason, just to relieve the the tension that seems to exist on that particular subject. My job as chairman is threefold. Number one is to conduct a safe meeting. That's the number one thing on my mind. Number two is to be responsible, and number three, to be fair. So those are the three things that we're going to be looking at from the start.
4 or 5 months, and you can see that St. Charles County, which is the red, for the first 3 or 4 months, we were way below St. Louis City and County. They had 2.5 to 3 times as many cases as we did. Now, sometime the fourth week in July, for some reason, our cases grew faster. And for the life of me, I don't know why. Maybe we'll figure it out someday. But for about a week there, we grew faster. But then for the next couple months, we grew about the same. But then, starting in September, you can see that we grew faster. And, to summarize here, what you can see now is, whereas before there was a lot of separation, now we're pretty much all in the same boat. We're pretty much all in the same boat. We've got the same number of cases, maybe even a few more per 100,000 people than St. Louis County. The issue is why, and we've got some people over there suggesting that the issue is because we don't have a mask mandate. I would suggest there's some other reasons why we no longer have this great advantage and why we're kind of all in the same boat together now. And the most important one is we've tried to get our kids back in school. And if you look at the, in other meetings we've had we've had the graph showing what the contract tracers are telling us is the source of the exposures. If you look at that, remember what I had back in July, our exposures due to school was 0. Last week, our exposures due to school was 30%. So 30% of our exposures are due to the fact that we're trying to get our kids back in school. Now, we can have a debate about that. I personally have taken the position from the beginning that it's absolutely, we need to do everything we can, and I've applauded our school boards and superintendents and teachers and everybody for doing a good job in a very difficult situation. But as you know, it was getting very difficult because of the CDC guidelines that required anyone within 6 foot of someone who was infected to then quarantine themselves. So what you had is a situation, if one student got sick, you'd have 20 or 30 kids in the class. They would have to quarantine. To address that situation, the governor issued an alternative set of guidelines, which again, were not mandatory. He wasn't telling people what to do. He was giving people at the local level the option of adopting these guidelines. The 5 superintendents in the county came to us. They asked us to adopt these guidelines. It was not a simple task. Dimitri Cianci Chapman, our Director of Public Health, worked with them for, took almost a week to work out the details. But we have basically presented them with a version of it's almost identical to what the governor suggested. But we've given them a version of that. And now the ball is basically in the court of the school boards.
But we do want to continue, and I guess this is probably a good time to remind our community, quarantines are not a school district decision. They're not even a local health department decision. It comes from the CDC through our health department to us. So these are guidelines that aren't just applying to us. And so when people are getting quarantined, we understand the hardships it causes, but we're not locally able to make a different decision there.
The 5 superintendents in the county came to us. They asked us to adopt these guidelines. It was not a simple task. Dimitri Cianci Chapman, our Director of Public Health, worked with them for, took almost a week to work out the details. But we have basically presented them with a version of it's almost identical to what the governor suggested. But we've given them a version of that, and now the ball is basically in the court of the school boards, okay? We have agreed that people who normally would be on quarantine because they had a contact with someone infected, not infected themselves, but simply a contact, okay? Before, those people would have to stay out of school for 14 days. Same way with a teacher in the same situation. Under this new proposal, they will be able to go back to school, and so will the teacher, as long as they have a very strict mask mandate in place. And as long as they, practice the social distancing and the other sorts of things that, once again, the schools are in a position to enforce. That teacher can see if everybody has a mask on, and it's very easy to enforce. So once again, the governor has given us that option with the requirement a mask mandate be involved for the school. We have then turned around and given the schools that option. And I know the superintendents are in favor of it. They, of course, will have to go to their elected officials and finalize this thing. But I'm hopeful that very shortly, more of these kids will get back in school. We can do an even better job of keeping our kids in school. Now, when all this is over, people will go ahead and look at what everybody's done and what everybody didn't do, and they'll decide who did too much and who didn't do enough and who did just about right. And obviously, I'd love for us to be in the third category, but it's just impossible. So we have to deal with the numbers that we have now and how we understand those numbers. And those are two very dedicated young ladies out at Lake St. Louis Hospital. And actually, the senator and I both visited with several of them on Friday, and I really can't say enough and thank them enough for the effort they're making. And they're just they're overworked. The experts are afraid that their numbers are going to continue to grow, and we're going to have a real crisis situation. So my only request is those of you that are here, I know everybody has a different opinion about different things, but if anybody has a good idea, and we did talk to them about several ideas on Friday, if anybody has a good idea how county government can help the hospitals avoid the situation that we're all fearful of here, I hope that you'll include that in your remarks this evening. And Mr. Chairman, if it's with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and give up the last 3 minutes of my time to Senator Onder.
Certainly.
Efficacy, and despite the fact that masks seem to be a holy grail for some people in this so-called public health community, the data are very conflicting and honestly not all that good. I believe in masks. I wear masks. We wear them at my medical office, but honestly, I'm doing it more on a hunch that they might do some good than this religious-like faith that you see in masks. And certainly, they're not the whole solution. So I thank you all for your time. I just want to commend Executive Edelman and all of you for staying the course and, again, going along with what I think is the right approach, the approach Governor Parson has urged, and the approach that I believe is consistent with our values here in St. Charles County. Thank you. So, I find it somewhat hypocritical that hospitals are saying, well, gosh, we have too many hospital beds in the region, and then the next flu season, they're crying for help. Hey, it's a real problem. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to belittle it, but I would say as of Friday, Ms. Kaiser told us that SSM was still doing elective procedures that are more profitable than treating flu and COVID patients.
Well, that and the fact that they always talk about death rates, and the death rate actually was higher last year than it is currently right now. So there is no increase in death rates in the country. And so
COVID.
Some numbers that aren't adding up.
Yeah, COVID death rates are different than influenza rates depending on which population you're looking at. Children, it's lower, and older, sicker folks, it's higher.
Mr. Cronin.
Yeah, Joe.
You read the St. University study.
Oh, yeah.
I just sent it to you.
So there was a study by the Department of Health and Social Justice, were the three primary authors, and then I think the fourth author was Commander Garza. It is impossible, it's frustrating, it is impossible to to interpret that study because, first of all, he doesn't even tell you which mask mandate. You know, the county.
It was a she, and I read it, okay? And the thing of it is, it compared our growth of infection since July compared to the other surrounding counties. Let me finish in a second, okay? And basically, counties with mask mandates got 40% less new infections since July than other counties that don't, including ours, Franklin, Jefferson, and that. Suggesting masks are wonderful. That's just a perfect world, that'd be fine. Look around this place. Did that work very well? This place doesn't look any better than that bar you threw up on the screen, okay? Our own public information, Doug Balnick comes out, and we get this on Wednesday. He says 40% of our total cases occurred in the last month. 8,000 new cases in this county. This thing's exploding. I have a best friend who's a VA doctor, who's retired in Colorado, got called back to active duty. He's working 14 hours in Denver right now, and he's telling me, you ain't seen nothing yet, folks. It's gonna get way worse. So, you know what, all the medical professionals, except you, are saying mask, mask, mask.
Nonsense,
Please, that's enough.
Let me say, that St. Louis U,
A little respect, please. Thank you.
That St. Louis U study is impossible to interpret because all they do is report these percentage changes. They don't tell you what day they started.
Doctor, I went
what
to
they
college
finished.
for 6 years, and I read it, and I understood it.
No, they
okay?
only reported percentage changes,
sent
Joe.
it to you
I understand that they asserted that there were these percentage changes, but they didn't tell you what their raw data set was that they were working off of. And I've asked Garza for that, and it's not been provided today. So if you want to talk studies, and I'm the only doctor, so the CDC's center, I would suggest the fact that you have some non-mask wearers in this room. Part of that is what's known as civil disobedience, Joe. And I predict that if this council mandates masks on this state, it will be the last day some people in this county wear masks. I will continue to wear masks. I think they may do something, but Joe, there's not it's not like Holy Writ from Mount Sinai that masks are effective as Commander Garza thinks they are.
He's a doctor too.
Yeah, I'm a doctor too, and so are the authors of the New England Journal of Medicine article that was a negative study too.
Mr. Hammond.
I don't really have any questions for you. I just want to share my personal experience since I recently got over the COVID. And it's like having, if you ever had the flu, imagine the worst flu you've ever had and double that, because that's how you're going to feel. You're going to hurt from head to toe. You're going to have difficulties eating, keeping anything down. It was terrible. And I'm 66, and I guess I'm lucky I survived. I didn't end up in the hospital, but I came close to going a couple times. It's no fun. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Donna Malcolmus. I am a teacher in Francis Howell School District for 35 years. I'd like for you to know that every day I see about 100 kids every day, and I fight tooth and nail to make sure that my students are wearing their mask because they're not always responsible when they wear a mask. You can look in our audience and see that there are people who wear a mask, but they don't do it responsibly. They don't have their nose covered. And so we have no idea when we walk into our school every single day what we're going to run into. Now, luckily, I'm a science teacher. I teach chemistry. I religiously wash my hands after every single class, and I religiously wear my mask. But not everybody does that. And I really believe that if the St. Charles if our county council would at least address, not tonight, I realize you're not voting on a mask mandate, but at least look at that a little more stronger in terms of having people wear a mask, I think it would go greatly in terms of helping reduce our numbers. I have a daughter who happens to be working at St. Joseph Hospital right now. She's in the cardiac care wing, but they switched her over to COVID. And all I want to say is her words to me have been, "Mom, do not ever have to go to the hospital. It is really bad." What happens, Mr. Hammond, in a couple of months after you've recovered from COVID? What's going to happen? Nobody knows what the long-term effects are going to be. What if What if, Mr. Hollander, what if you have a heart attack right now and our hospitals are already full with all these people that have COVID that could have possibly been prevented by wearing a mask and washing their hands and being socially responsible and socially distancing? What's going to happen? All we're asking you is just to take that in consideration, because I don't want the words, Mom, don't go to the hospital, to ever have to make me make that decision like, oh my gosh, I can't go to the hospital because there's just too many people already there. It's going to be triage. Some people are going to have to die. I hope that's not me. And I certainly hope that doesn't happen to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am here tonight, though, to represent more than 4,000 teachers and educational support personnel in this county. In behalf of the Francis Howell Education Association, the Fort Zumwalt Education Association, St. Charles, Wentzville, Francis Howell ESP, which is our educational support personnel, and our St. Charles transportation people. We have a letter that we are going to read to you. Educators act out of a sense of duty to protect our students. We are morally bound to protect students' health and safety. The relaxed guidelines issued on November 12th by Missouri's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and Governor Parson recklessly permit people exposed to COVID-19 to remain in contact with our students and our educators. At the direction of County Executive Ellman, on Tuesday, November 24th, the St. Charles County Health Department delivered new guidelines to our county superintendents. When school began in the fall, the 7-day positivity rate reported for the St. Charles County Public Health was 9.5. As of Thursday, November 12th, the day the guidelines were issued, the rate had increased to 25.75. As of Friday, November 20th, it was 31.22. That's from our own county website dashboard. Infections continue to hit record highs. Now is the time to increase our efforts to reduce the spread, not decrease them. Cases across Missouri, specifically in St. Charles County, are rising dramatically. Now is the time to invest more heavily in mitigation strategies, such as reducing class sizes to ensure physical distancing, which in Wentzville is pretty hard to do, increasing ventilation, accelerating testing and contact tracing, purchasing higher quality PPE, and hiring additional staff to aid in our sanitation. This is especially important in schools where additional families are choosing in-person options for the second semester, which will increase our class sizes and decrease social distancing opportunities. The state's new guidance is ill-conceived and runs contrary to the guidance of the national health experts and the CDC. The CDC guidelines continue to recommend quarantine of anyone who experiences prolonged exposure to COVID-19. As asymptomatic individuals are not currently recommended to test for COVID-19, we do not have sufficient data to assert that quarantine students are not positive. We only know that they're not exhibiting symptoms. With our current protocols, these potentially asymptomatic students are quarantined beyond the window where they may be contagious. Without quarantine, the potential of asymptomatic spread dramatically increases, which puts our at-risk teachers, students in more danger because they are more likely to have serious complications. May I finish? Thank you. We have known from the beginning of this crisis that we have staff and students with comorbidities that put them at increased risk from serious complications from COVID-19. Knowing that area hospitals are being pushed to capacity and even canceling some elective surgeries, we cannot responsibly change protocols that put people in danger of not having access to the care they may need if serious complications arise. We urge the leadership of the St. Charles County School Districts and the St. Charles County Department of Health to return the quarantine protocols recommended by the CDC for the safety of our students, our staff, our families, and our broader community. I found it interesting, Mr. Ellman, that your quote from Mr. Lincoln said, "Pronounced decisions don't help." This pronounced decision is not helping us. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Erin Shetler, and I'm a resident of Harvester with a daughter in the Francis Howell district. I'm here because I'm scared. I'm scared for my daughter, our teachers, and our health. I'd like to read a letter I wrote to the school board last week before knowing that it was you guys who made this call to relax the quarantine rules. And I'd like to read part of it now. And The quarantine rules agreed upon by county officials will make it even more dangerous for our families. It is not modified quarantine. It is letting people who are quarantined by the health department go to school and let other people be put into danger. If it's not safe enough for a child or teacher to go to the grocery store, then it's not safe enough for them to go to school. Our positivity rate is too high for this risk, and the district should not be making health decisions that go against basic health guidelines. I know the job of a county officer and a school board member has never been more difficult. I know the quarantine rules set forth by public health and disease prevention bodies have put an extreme strain on our kids and our families and our teachers. I'm asking that our officials focus on figuring out how to make quarantined students and families more supported instead of making our schools less safe. You really don't need to imagine the scenario, as the odds say it will happen soon. An infected but non-symptomatic student follows the district's new rules and comes to school. A teacher or student is exposed to that person, gets sick, and dies. The senator talked about the real questions. The real question for all of you is, which side of the public health crisis do you want to be on when this scenario takes place? Do you want to be on the one where you can stand up and say you did everything possible to protect kids and teachers, or the one where someone dies because of a decision you made? With this positivity rate, we will all find out soon enough. Your teachers, staff, administrators, health officials, and paraprofessionals are amazing people who are literally risking their lives to come to work. The least you can do is respect them enough to make decisions that take their safety into account. Now I'd like to ask a few questions for the record, because I haven't been able to find the answers. Are St. Charles County schools participating in a study involving the safety of going against county and health officials' quarantine rules? If so, have parents and teachers been notified that their families are being used in a study that could compromise their health and safety? Question 2. Do you agree that there will be blood on your hands when someone gets sick and dies because you decided our kids and teachers aren't good enough for basic public health? Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to first say that the senator just said that masks don't work, and then we're supposed to send our kids to school when they're exposed, because everyone should be okay because they're wearing masks. Everybody heard that, right? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not crazy. Okay, because I really wasn't sure how much my voice would matter when it's so very clear that changing the quarantine guidelines is so very wrong. Those in charge have to know how wrong it is. So I'm not sure how anything I can say could possibly make a difference. I have to try though. Loosening the quarantine guidelines when hospitals are full just makes absolutely no sense. What the district is doing now is working fairly well. Honestly, better than many people expected. The district needs to keep doing exactly what they are doing now to keep the numbers from getting worse. Changing the quarantine guidelines could very well end up causing so many more cases that the district, my district in particular, Francis Howell, would end up going all virtual. This would be a great hardship for single parents, families with both parents working, and children who really need in-person school to receive services and therapies. Changing the rules mid-semester isn't fair to students going in person. The parents signed up for their kids to go to school in person, being told that if someone is exposed, they would be quarantined. It isn't fair to change the rules in the middle of the semester when parents can't change to virtual. It absolutely isn't fair to teachers and staff who signed up to teach and work for the year, being told exposed students, teachers, and staff would be quarantined. It isn't as if teachers can just quit when they don't feel safe. They have house payments, rent, car payments, need insurance, etc. Many teachers I've spoken to feel trapped. They love their job, they love their students, but they also don't want to get sick or die.